Hey guys, so recently some of my subscribers have suggested I do a Draw My Life video. I'd never heard of it before, but when I looked it up, I was amazed. This is such a cool thing to do. I debated whether I should do it, mainly because most of the people who did it are either incredibly YouTube famous or have some really sad or interesting stories, and I just don't know if I do. Oh well, here's Draw My Life, the Tara Babcock edition. It all started November 10th, 1989, when I was born in the University of Washington Hospital in Seattle. My family consisted of mom, dad, and a really fat cat named Shadow, and later, another really fat cat named Climber. My mom was notorious for spoiling her animals with food, mini pancakes included. My parents had never married for no particular reason, and I was just given my dad's surname Babcock. My mom's was no better. For the first 7 years of my life, we weren't really too well off. We lived in this little apartment building, and my dad worked construction while my mom managed the 7-Eleven around the corner. I remember walking there after school every day with friends and getting pepperoni sticks and Slurpees. When I was really young, my parents introduced me to their old Atari. My first game was Pitfall. I just remember playing video games as much as I possibly could, mostly with my dad. My mom would play Bubble Bobble and Rainbow Island with me too. I always played as Bob though. It was at this super early age that I realized I had the most fun while playing games, and that feeling never really went away. My parents also liked to go rollerblading and biking, playing tennis, basketball with my dad, or hiking on the weekends, which I really enjoyed throughout my whole childhood. Some of my fondest memories as a kid with my parents were during these weekend adventures. My mom was always worried that I'd get hurt, but my dad obviously really wanted a boy. He always supported me climbing things and exploring. I really liked cars too. My mom had this badass blue El Camino, and I loved my dad's Chevy trucks. I was really sad when they got rid of them. I got my first car from my mom, and I've spent exponentially more money on it than it's actually worth. My dad got injured and had to stop doing construction for a while. During that time, we spent a lot of awesome times together as a family playing video games and stuff, but I also remember my mom freaking out because we were really tight on money. She was always trying to save and have more than enough. Eventually, this change turned out alright because my dad got this awesome job as a maintenance supervisor of a wealthy company that owned a high-end shopping mall in most of downtown Bellevue. My mom also got a job as a school bus driver, which meant she had whole summers off at home. I love that my dad got that job because he would bring home cool stuff and I would volunteer at this awesome arts fair every summer. We moved to a new house near the high school my dad went to. I really didn't want to move schools and leave my friends, so my dad made sure to wake up every morning and drive me himself to my old school the rest of my elementary school career. The new next door neighbors had 5 daughters, and 3 of them were around my age. I thought it would be really cool to have some friends living so close to me. I tried really hard to get along with them, but they weren't really interested in gaming and they seriously didn't get my jokes. This is when I started realizing that I wasn't like the other girls at school either. They were into like the Hanson brothers and Britney Spears, and I was into Pokemon, Monty Python, and playing video games all the time. I even tried conforming and going to sleepovers, but I ended up just getting bored or getting kinda outcast there. Well, later on in middle school, I did have some hot bisexual girlfriends that loved to give me full body oil massages. Being bi-curious in middle school was so in. But I guess that's a topic for another story. The only girlfriends I ever had took on more of a sidekick role, probably to compensate for my strong personality. My closest one was, and still is, a cute half-Viet girl named Ashley. When Pokemon came to the US, I was the first kid to get really into it in my school. Being the spoiled only child that I was, I had all of the games for the Game Boy, even the imported Japanese editions, as well as all the toys and figures. I pretty much got everything I wanted as a kid. I remember back when I discovered Sonic the Hedgehog, I really wanted a Tails stuffed animal. My parents searched for weeks calling toy stores. I'll never forget the moment I walked into the store and finally saw him, dual tails and all in the bottom bin of a bunch of plushies. I started playing Pokemon cards too, and my dad would take me to all of the tournaments at the Wizard of the Coast stores, helping me collect as many cards as I could. He taught me to put them away in sleeve books. I pretty much had the whole first edition by the time I stopped. When I was about 9, those snobby girls and their family moved out of the house next door, and a family with a boy 1 year older than me moved in. He was this cute kid with black hair, blue eyes, and a birthmark on his nose. His name was Chris, and he immediately became my best friend. Finally, someone who liked the shows and games that I liked. By about that time, I was so spoiled with video games that the extra room in our house was my personal gaming room. I had 2 TVs in a rack with a Super NES, Sega CD, PlayStation, N64, and eventually an Xbox. My dad and I were renting and borrowing PlayStation games and burning them for a chipped PS1, so I had literally hundreds of games. If Chris and I weren't inside playing video games like Donkey Kong Country, swapping discs to see what we could make in the Shrine and Monster Rancher, or playing some co-op game, we were outside riding bikes and pretending we were the protagonists in video games that we played. I remember taking water balloons and playing worms in real life, shouting, "I'll get you!" in our best high-pitched British accent. When I hit 6th grade, I got my first legitimate boyfriend. He was this sweet rocker boy named Casey who I'd been friends with since 1st grade, and who loved me just way too much. We spent a lot of time together, and I really wanted to sleep with him since I had been interested in sex since I was about 8. I felt ready mentally and physically, and I thought he'd be a great first, as caring as he was. So we did it, but only twice. No regrets whatsoever. I was a pretty heartless chick to him though sometimes, and eventually ended up leaving him for another guy at some point in middle school. This was around the time my mom enrolled me into modeling school too. She was worried I was too much of a tomboy, and I'm actually glad I went. It was the last missing piece that made me feminine and become fascinated with beauty and fitness. Now not only did I have these awesome guy interests, I was also a pretty girly girl. I was finally becoming the fembot you guys know today. Mid-middle school, I started getting really curious about weed, so I started experimenting with a neighborhood boy my age called Zach, who was a total stoner. Because of the pot smoking, Chris and I stopped hanging as much. We would still play video games together sometimes, but I became more interested, stupidly, in the weed and how it got me to meet the cooler, older high school skater boys. One rainy day, a skater boy buddy of mine took me to the local elementary school to meet with a guy to buy some weed. The dealer was this muscular, curly-haired guy named Andrew. Andrew and I began to talk about exes and relationships over a bowl that day, and we became very, very close friends from then on. We spent every day together that summer. We would talk on the phone for 5 hours a night, and I would get up and ride my bike to his house for breakfast every morning. We'd smoke together, hang out together, and sneak into hotel pools and other fun shit together. There was this profound understanding and brotherly love I felt from him. He was a really sensitive and caring, albeit messed up guy, and he was incredibly protective of me. Part of him being protective was that he wanted to find a perfect boyfriend for me. He hooked me up with his friend Aaron, which didn't work out. Then he hooked me up with his wealthy cousin Brennan, who was a drummer in this pretty cool band. I had an on-again, off-again fling with Brennan for a while, which usually ended up with me making out with him all night at one of his parties he threw at his house, but nothing really came of it. Finally, he introduced me to a guy named Jared. He became my boyfriend for 2-ish years and was undeniably the biggest mistake of my life. Jared and Andrew would support me at my cheer practices. I must admit, it was a lot of fun having a best friend and boyfriend who were super close. But the stealing of cars and being in and out of juvenile detention really wore on me emotionally. I really thought I cared for this guy, and I really wanted to see him change for the better. Jared and Andrew had a falling out, and Jared asked me not to talk to Andrew anymore. I would secretly talk to him still all the time because he was my best friend, but I didn't want to piss off my boyfriend. One night, I was on the phone with Jared when Andrew rang my doorbell. He looked freaked out and really stressed and said he needed me. Jared was telling me, "Shut the door, fuck him, tell him to go away," and I listened to him. The next day, I was informed he had been found dead. I blamed myself for a long time, and it made it even harder to deal with Jared's bullshit. After the funeral, a mutual friend found a picture Andrew had drawn that said, "To Tara, my savior." Jared going away became a pattern, going to juvie for a week, then later a month, then more months, writing me letters all the while promising me he'd change. I was angry I let myself depend on such an asshole, and that it had literally cost me a best friend. For a while, things settled and Jared got a job at this Bollywood theater. I loved watching the movies there, and eating samosas, but mostly I just really loved that he seemed to be on track. These were the only truly good moments I can actually remember from that clusterfuck of a relationship. But of course, he did it again. He was going away for a few years this time, and while I never broke up with him, I was emotionally done with him. I wrote less and I started dating other guys. One of his friends, a guy in a metal band, but nothing really worked out. By the end of freshman year, the best thing that ever happened to me came along in Spanish class. I started chatting with a cute class clown type boy who was new to the area and had nothing to do with any of the annoying bullshit that surrounded me at school. His name was Jovan, or Jay for short. He was 2 grades older than me. We ended up doing projects together in class and got pretty close, talking all night on AIM or on the phone. He really was my idea of perfection. He was not only sexy, bilingual and from Europe, had a great body and was smart, but he also really loved video games and helped me get back into the things I loved before that shitstorm spiraled out of control. He didn't want me drinking or doing drugs anymore like I did, so he told me he would buy me some Abercrombie clothes if I stopped. As one of my weaknesses, I could not resist. It turned out it was his birthday money from his dad in Serbia he used to take me shopping. From then on, we were definitely the cute couple around school, passing notes in his language and just being generally adorable. He started college, and I started an accelerated learning program at a local college too, since my grades were so good, even despite all of the shit I went through. And we pretty much spent every second of always together. God, I wish public schools in the US were much more challenging. You know, I actually skipped over 50 days of school in my sophomore year, and I still had the best grades in the class. It made me feel like I was just really, really smart or something. Anyway, one day, Jay had a talk with me that he didn't want to be in a traditional relationship. And even though we wanted to be together all the time, he still wanted to go out and have fun and, mess around with other girls and stuff. It was crazy, but I totally felt exactly the same way. Our friendship and relationship was so much deeper than any conventional title could grasp. I started modeling and making money, so in 2009 I invested in big boobies and gave the full-time model thing a go. All of a sudden, at 19 years old, I was a full-time model making a living, traveling when I wanted, meeting new people, and taking awesome jobs. I was seeing myself in magazines and people were dying to work with me. It was insane. My favorite part of it all was girls looking up to me and wanting to follow in my footsteps, and everyone being really surprised by my professionalism and business sense at such a young age. I was really proud of myself. Jay scored a job too at Boeing, and we moved to this adorable place across from Lake Washington and set up an awesome gaming and computer room in our new haven. I was really happy traveling and shooting and hanging out and just being a sexy model, but I realized that even though I made some really awesome friends in the industry, I never really felt like I belonged with them. I was talking about gaming and they just wanted to go to clubs and get wasted. I realized that now that I had made this brand and name for myself, it would be amazing to actually pursue something on the side related to gaming. I loved modeling and being creative and expressing my sexuality, but I wanted to be around gaming and a crowd I belonged with more too. Who doesn't want to do the things they love as a career? Since I met Jay, we've beaten probably 100 console games and even co-owned a successful rating guild in World of Warcraft, which was my full-time addiction anytime I was not modeling. One fateful day, Jay and I were watching BlizzCon 2011, and once all of the WoW stuff was over, we started watching the Warcraft 3 and StarCraft casts. Right then and there, I fell head over heels in love with esports. How could there be an event so huge with so many people cheering for a video game like it's a traditional sport? There was a place where I could go and feel like I fit in, a place where we could talk strategy in a game like StarCraft where I could actually test my limits and improve. I decided I wanted to see if I could get good at StarCraft and maybe eventually overcome my shortcomings and make a career as a host or a shoutcaster. I could see myself on a stage, talking about a game I love in front of thousands of people who love it too. I realized that if I could combine the two things I love, gaming and modeling, I could work toward the ultimate goal of my perfect life. I started out as a Bronze League noob and worked my way up, watching Day 9 dailies and tournaments like the GSL, and I started going to events and even streaming. Not only have I had the best time of my life in the last couple years, I couldn't ask for more. I am doing what I love with the people that I love and meeting amazing new friends along the way that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. So, right now, I'm happy just the way things are. I don't think too much about the future, probably because the present is just too damn good. Although I can get way too busy and a little stressed, I still know that I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Thank you, Jay, for saving my life, and so much more. I'd also like to thank my parents, since I don't do it too much, who taught me while still giving me the freedom to think for myself, and for supporting me in everything. Oh, and for spoiling me rotten. You guys gave me a pretty sick childhood. I would be nothing without the modeling and gaming fans who continually supported my journey. Thank you for making my dreams a tangible goal just by loving games and beautiful women. You guys rock. If there's anything I'd want to say to you guys, it'd be to never stop smiling and to never give up. Did I seriously just make this sound all mushy and inspirational like everyone else? God damn it. Here's a penis. And Tara lived happily ever after. The end.